Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. You know, there's times when just Julie and I are around the house and we just need a little bit of dessert. We don't need a big dessert and we don't need dessert for days. So for those times, we've got a bunch of smaller cake recipes that really just are for two people. This cake recipe fits in a tiny little 6-inch cake pan. Perfect size, just for the two of us, or maybe just a little bit extra to take for lunch tomorrow. So in this bowl, I've put some flour. To that, I'm going to add cocoa powder, some salt, and baking soda. And I'll just give that a little bit of a stir to bring it together. You don't have to stir it too much. That's good. So I'll set that aside. Now in this bowl, I've got some butter and some sugar. And I'm just going to cream that together. Now, to the butter and sugar, I'm going to add an egg yolk. You don't need the egg white, but if you don't have another use for the white and you don't want to waste the white, you can definitely put the entire egg in. It's not going to ruin the cake. Change the texture a little bit, but it's not a huge deal if you use the entire egg. And I'm also going to put in a little bit of vanilla, and I'll just continue bringing that together. Now we're ready for the final assembly. So I need a 1/4 cup of Coca Cola, and pour that out, let it foam down a little bit more. Okay, so I've got the flour mixture. I'm going to put in probably about 1/3 of that. Mix it in. And I'm going to alternate dry, liquid, dry, liquid. So this is buttermilk. This recipe started out as a chocolate buttermilk cake. And the buttermilk was important in that other cake because the acid in the buttermilk activated the baking soda. The acid in the Coke will activate the baking soda. So you don't have to use buttermilk. Don't go out and buy buttermilk specifically for this recipe. You can use regular milk. It'll be fine. So I'm going to put in about half of the buttermilk. I'm going to pour in a little bit of the Coca Cola. And then I'll go back to the flour, and I'll just keep doing this until it's all mixed together. There we go. It's all mixed together. So I've got the little cake pan. It is buttered, and I've got a parchment disc in the bottom just to make the whole thing easier to get out at the end. And we'll get this batter into the pan. Smooth that into the edges. And into the oven. Now, the cake is cooling here on the countertop, so we're going to make the icing. Pretty basic icing. I've got some butter, and I'm going to put that into this pot to melt. And along with melting the butter, I've got some chocolate chips to melt in and some powdered cocoa. And so this is just on a fairly gentle heat to melt all of these things together. Not too hot. You don't want to scorch the chocolate chips. If you are at all worried about temperature control and scorching the chocolate, getting it too hot and scorching the chocolate, do this in a double boiler, or put the butter and the chocolate chips into a glass measuring cup and stick it in the microwave and melt it that way.
Shuffling music from your library.
Chicken? What are you doing? Chicken was operating the stereo over in the corner of the studio. What was I saying? do it in a double boiler if you're at all worried about scorching it. This is a really nice induction cooktop. I've got some pretty precise control over the temperature and the heat. I'm not all that worried about it. So now we're going to put in about 3 tablespoons of Coke, just to give it a bit of that caramely flavor. Okay, and at this point, I'm going to pull that off of the heat. Temperature's pretty good, so we're going to put in some vanilla. And I'm going to switch to a whisk. Now I've got icing sugar. I'm going to put in about half of the icing sugar that I need. And we'll whisk that in. Recipe says about a cup of icing sugar. In most cases, that's going to do it. Sometimes I end up having to put in maybe a 1/4 cup extra just to kind of get the texture and consistency right. And this one is a little bit difficult to tell sometimes because you have warmed the chocolate and the butter, and as it cools down to room temperature, it will solidify. So it's one of those trial and error things. The first time you make it, you're going to say, that's not right, but then it turns out that it is. And so you kind of need to learn from your past mistakes. A little bit runny. Okay. I'm going to say that's good. So I'm going to let this cool to room temperature, and then we're going to ice the cake.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, Jules.
Hey, friends. Hey, cake.
Tiny little cake for 2.
Oh, I'll get myself a little fork for...
Could even be cake for 3.
No. Maybe. It is kind of big for 2. Although, you know, maybe if you're going to have it over, I'll stay on this side. A couple of... I mean, 1/4 of a cake seems like a lot when you say it out loud. Looks good.
Look at that. Okay. There we go. So, Coca Cola cake.
Oh.
So there's Coke in the cake, and there's a little bit of Coke in the frosting or the icing.
What are you hoping for?
So the Coke brings acid,
Yeah.
and so that will make it a more tender cake. You're not going to get a whole lot of flavor.
You know, it's not going to taste like Coca Cola.
No.
But I wonder if Coca Cola, like some other things, will enhance the chocolate flavor. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like coffee or stout.
Mm-hmm. But it makes a really tender cake. A little bit of caramely flavor. It does enhance the chocolate, but there's no definitive Coca-Cola flavor.
No, I wouldn't expect that.
No, you wouldn't know. If you didn't know, you wouldn't know.
That's good, though.
Which is a meme that's trending right now about our Coca-Cola video. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you... Anyway, I don't know. I don't know what it was. Something like that.
Okay, well, you know, you're not just polished off. Yeah, maybe it is only just for 2. Mm-hmm. Maybe just for 1. Maybe I won't share anymore.
So that's a good cake. It's a good size. It's a manageable size.
It's cake, and I'm going to eat it. And I've almost eaten the whole thing.
Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.